Hello, everyone. I'm Jenni Webb with OPA, the Organization for Professional Astrology, and I'm here today with astrologer and spiritual counselor Magali Morales. She is the Director of Education on the board of OPA, and today we're going to talk about the upcoming OPA retreat that's happening October 15th through the 19th at New Park Resort in Park City, Utah. And Magali will be leading the consulting skills training at the retreat. And I'm so glad to have her here with me today. Magali, it is so lovely to see you again.
Likewise, Jenny, thank you for having me. It's wonderful to see you again because I remember we've been through a consulting skills class together already.
Yeah, we did. And quite a bit of time has passed since then. So
Mm.
it's nice to see your lovely face again today. You're always a joy to talk to.
Thank you. You as well. Have you finished your certification with OPA?
I have one more peer group and then I will be certified. So very close,
Amazing.
almost
Yeah.
done.
Wonderful. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I've enjoyed the process. And you'll be, like I said, you'll be teaching consulting skills this fall. And that is a required course for the OPA certification program. So could you share with us a little bit more about that program?
Sure, I'm a sure thing. And the truth is I enjoyed the process a lot too. I only got certified, I think a year and a half ago, I completed my own certification. So, as you know, there are many worldwide organizations that work with astrology. OPA is one of them. But one of the things that distinguishes OPA from other organizations is that whereas some of the others teach you how to become an astrologer, OPA teaches you how to be a successful astrologer, and how to stay connected to a community and a supportive a supportive network. So the OPA certification is both geared to help you do more effective astrology and have really effective relationships with clients, but also to develop your business. And so none of the courses that comprise the certification actually teach you astrology. So the assumption is you've already learned astrology and you're coming in to just become a more blossoming astrologer. And the process consists of 5 courses that are taken within 2 years or so. You can take them more slowly, but so 3 of them are peer groups. And the peer groups are very intimate, small groups that I think they all last about 24 hours. So you can take them within a few weeks, or you can take them in 3 very concentrated days. And in the peer groups, you meet with 3 other astrologers and one mentor and really share deeply about your practice, your business, and challenges that you've encountered, as an astrologer. And peer groups need to be taken is spaced out by about 9 months. So when we say it takes about 2 years to become OPA certified, the whole point is that you take one peer group and then you wait 9 months, gather more experience, see more clients, feel more into what it is to be an astrologer, and then you take your next peer group. And then you wait another 9 months at least to take your last one. But aside from those 3 courses, there are 2 more. One of them is astronomy for astrologers, which we think is very important for astrologers to know now that we have computers who do all the math for us. We think it's so important for us to know, where did this information come from? Like, how does the cosmos actually move? And how do we build the chart? And to make those important connections between gazing at the sky and creating the chart. And then the last one is the course that we're going to talk about the most here, you and I today, which is consulting skills. So, as you know, my first career was as a psychotherapist, and I bring some of those skills about working with people and helping people with the problems of their lives to make sure that we can prepare astrologers for that very, very personable side of the job, right? When you become a professional astrologer, human beings come to you with their problems and with all their, messiness and imperfections that, we all have, we all share. But how do we then serve them in a compassionate, respectful, effective way? Well, I've been around for a while, so I have had to do the astrology cleanup job before. I imagine maybe you have too, Jenny, that, once in a while a person comes to you and says, I was really injured by the way this astrologer treated me. Has that ever happened to you?
Yes, absolutely. I had a comment on social media just today.
Yeah, so unfortunately, this is not uncommon. And we come from a professional, from a profession that is that's very often about self-employment, right? I call us the radicals of extreme self-employment. We usually work alone.
Mhm.
We don't have to answer to any specific organization. But the nice thing about belonging to a community like OPA is that there is an ethical framework there to help us. And there are humans with a lot of experience who can answer our questions when we get into difficult situations. So I too have had to do an astrology cleanup job. I've had people come to me to say, "Oh my God, I saw an astrologer and and then I was depressed for 2 years because they told me some horrible things about my life." And I had to say to them, "Look, this is not how astrology works. That's not real astrology. Let's look at it and think about it in an empowering way." So, one of our maxims in the ethical code of OPA is to do no harm. And another side of that is just to give effective services. So when somebody is first becoming an astrologer, they need to learn, okay, how do I protect my boundaries? How do I listen to people's problems without burning out? What is an appropriate way to give counsel without just telling people what to do? Because guess what? We don't have a right to tell people what to do. People are the owners of their own life. So this consulting skills is where we look at all that whole puzzle and learn about it together.
Yeah, great. Thanks for sharing all that. Yeah, it's um, after I had consulting skills, how I did readings changed quite a bit. We
I was
learned how to
going to
have
ask
that.
you,
Yeah, we learned to have that conversation, the astrological conversation, not the astrological monologue, right? And
right, which was a very common thing in the old times, I would say.
Mhm.
I met a lot of astrologers from, 20, 30 years ago who would just meet with a client and give them a long monologue. Like, this is who you are, and this is what your life is about. Right? But I think what we have nowadays is a dialogue.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit more, Jenny. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but what did you appreciate about the consulting skills course? Like what was meaningful for you, would you say?
Um, we also practiced in
Hmm.
consulting skills. So after, and I don't remember at what point we did that, but I think it was toward the end. We started practicing more and more, and we would pair up, and we may even have one person kind of watching the two people have a dialogue. And the requirements were don't talk about astrology. I
That
don't,
was one of the first exercises, right? So you're
yeah.
right. The course is experiential. We will learn by doing. And I think that's important to point out. And that other part that you're talking about is, can you hold off on the astrological information just long enough that you can listen to this person and their life situation and develop some empathy for them before you go to here's all my astrological wisdom, right?
Yeah. 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 Learning how to listen and how to have that conversation and take where that person is at in their life and then use astrology to answer their questions. Use that natal chart. And the flow of my sessions are so different, after having this class. So hopefully, the viewers watching will be inspired to sign up, and hopefully, you have that experience as well. Um, what would you say is a common challenge for students as they're taking this course? What's a common challenge or an issue or a topic of discussion that comes up? Not, I don't want to give away too much of the course, but
That's fine. No, hey, I don't mind. We give away free content at OPA all the time, and we can mention some very specific things. But what comes to my mind when you ask me that question is in the difficulty people have in handling their boundaries. So I worked as a trauma healing specialist for many, many years. I still work with that population. And one of the things that's difficult when you listen to other people's problems is to stay, to feel, to not feel too burdened, right? And this is a matter of boundaries. And boundaries exist in many ways. I mean, there are things like time boundaries, when if you say the session is from 9 to 10, you really should end by 10. But sometimes people feel like they should give more and then they stay longer. There are money boundaries, how much is your fee and are you willing to really stand by that and charge your fee because you deserve to make a good living? But then there's other kinds of boundaries. If a client calls you and is feeling suicidal, or if a client discloses that they have witnessed the abuse of a child. I mean, these are much more complex emotional boundaries, and they can feel like a great emotional burden on the practitioner. So one of the things we want to do is to teach people to work from an empowered place, to protect their boundaries, and then also to know when it's time to refer the person to somebody else, when it's time to confront a client with a certain thing, what is their own personal tolerance for the content that the clients bring in.
Mhm.
Or, once in a while, you have a very compassionate astrologer who feels for a client who is in a great deal of pain, or a client who's having an emotional crisis, and then they kind of override their own boundaries and say like, "Oh, let me send you money, or let me give you help," or something. You know, that is not our role. But because we're human and we care about others, it's easy to be unaware of where those boundaries lie. So I think one of the most valuable things about this course is to confront us with our own places where we may be codependent or we might be, doing more work than necessary for the client. Like to just really define that place. This is where I meet my client. This is how I respectfully meet them. And then I just let them go. And then how do I then free myself from some of that content so that at night I'm not going to bed and staying up all night thinking about my client because I'm worried about them. So this is something I had to learn as a therapist, and I think that all astrologers deserve to learn because we don't want astrologers to suffer from compassion fatigue or secondary trauma, right? We want them to stay well. And part of that is, it's like just like you wash your hands before you cook, how do you wash out your mind before you see the next client
Right. Yeah.
or at the end of the day?
Yeah, what a great discussion, about boundaries. You're refreshing my memory now, of the course, but it, protects the client, but in these discussions in these classes for the certification, we also talk about ourselves, the astrologer, and how to protect ourselves too, so we can keep doing this work.
Exactly. To thrive and be well and be healthy and have lots to offer while also doing this very emotionally demanding work. True. And then one more issue comes to mind, Jenny, that I think is a big part of the course, which is working with clients who are very different from ourselves, right? People who are from a different culture, have a different background, different age, different class background, different gender identity. The truth is that the world is very diverse and
Right.
and we are likely to encounter clients who have different, not just a different cultural background than we do, but different beliefs. And so, how do we handle that respectfully without imposing our own beliefs or without making assumptions about who the client is, which is also related to listening well to the other person?
Yeah. Yeah, that's important.
Mhm.
Diversity and respecting diversity, especially today, because we do encounter all different kinds of people. And, you never know if you do sessions over the phone or you have a social media um, page or website, someone from out of the country may try to contact you. You meet all different kinds of people in this work.
That's right, and in OPA, I think that's particularly true. I remember my last peer group was facilitated by a teacher who lives in Greece. She is bicultural, and so she speaks Greek, she speaks English. She has lived in Australia, I believe, in an English-speaking country, but also she inhabits a very different culture. In fact, she used to lead a TV show about astrology that happened every day in Greece. So imagine, like, that's such a different kind of valuing of that society gives to astrology in a different country. And some of my classmates, actually, not a single one of my classmates in that course was from the same country as me. So I'm from Mexico. I live in the United States. There were people from Europe, people who live in Australia, you know, somebody else who is American in that course. And so even just as being part of the OPA community, we are a very diverse bunch. And it's really helpful to not come into any conversation with assumptions, but rather with curiosity, with openness, and with willingness to learn and be surprised. So one of the things that we cover in consulting skills is what we sometimes call anti-oppression theory, which is how do people how do people experience power in society, right? I mean, let's just think about men and women and the queer community, right? In So often, men are given more power in society than women or the queer community. So how can we understand these differences? Or let's talk about age, right? I've heard astrologers say that they dislike young astrologers. Or I've heard people say that they dislike Capricorns, So there's all kinds of conscious and unconscious prejudices that we may be carrying that may blind us, that may, really prevent us from being aware of what the client is presenting. And so one fun opportunity in this course is to really notice, like, okay, do we have any unconscious prejudice? Do we want to look at it? Can we deconstruct it? And also, can we learn, okay, this is the experience of women in the world or in this country. This is the experience of say the queer community. I mean, when we talk about the LGBT community, the truth is that they have different levels of rights in different countries, right? So if we are going to serve somebody who lives in a country where they don't have full human rights, we need to be aware of that. Same as, for example, when say we're serving a female client who wants to talk about her career, and what if she comes from a country where women do not have full access to education or certain, job opportunities, right? So we can't make assumptions about that. We need to think about how this person experiences their own life, and that's where the listening comes in. And then we have to pair up our astrological expertise with a cultural lens, and if we don't understand their culture, how can we be humble enough to just keep asking questions so that we can make a meaningful interpretation?
Yeah. Great. So much great information in this course. If all of you watching decide to sign up, you get to talk about all of this and more and have discussions. It's not just Magali preaching to you through the whole class.
That I promise.
Us talks about it and shares information and shares experiences. So
Mhm.
I encourage you all to sign up. Magali, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. You all can find Magali at magalimorales.com or on Instagram at Magali Spiritual Counseling or Magali Morales Spiritual Counseling on Facebook. And to everyone watching, if you'd like to support OPA and help us spread the word, feel free to like, subscribe, and share this video. You can visit opaastrology.org to learn more about our organization or to sign up for the upcoming retreat in Park City this October. So once again, I'm Jenni Webb. Thanks for joining us, and we hope to see you all at the retreat.
That's right. Thank you so much, Jenny, for being here. And I was at the October retreat last year with OPA, and it's a beautiful location. I just can't say enough good about this location. So I know everybody will enjoy it greatly.
Great.